What if the greatest moments in baseball history weren't just the result of talent, training, or timing, but a manipulation, silence, and secrets buried beneath the grass of the diamond? What if the home runs you cheered, the legends you idolized, and the records you believed were sacred were all part of something darker? This isn't a game of statistics, it's a game of control. Because behind every crack of the bat and roar of the crowd, there's a shadowy layer to America's pastime, a place where balls are juiced, bats are swapped in secret, and careers vanish without explanation. Some of these theories are so wild you'll want to dismiss them, but others, they're backed by facts, courtrooms, and confessions. And once you hear them, you may never look at baseball the same way again. 1. Juice ball theory claim MLB altered baseballs to increase offense, particularly home runs. Evidence: home run spikes in 2017 and 2019. MLB bought Rawlings in 2018. Goldilocks balls found in Yankees games during Aaron Judge's 6-8 HR season. Plausibility: moderate. Ball composition changed, but deliberate manipulation remains unproven. They say baseball is America's pastime, but what happens when the pastime becomes a puzzle, layered with secrets, symbols, and whispers? From locker rooms no one dares talk about. Welcome to the Hidden Diamond, where the game you thought you knew gets cracked wide open. We're not just talking about stats or standings, we're digging into the shadows, behind the scoreboard, from mysterious power outages to bats swapped through the ceiling, and baseballs that seem to fly a little. The farthest isn't just baseball. It's a thriller disguised as sport. And if you think this is just wild speculation, think again, because some of these theories, they've got teeth. Others, well, they're cautionary tales about how much fans want to believe there's always more going on than what we're told. Either way, once you step onto this field, you'll never watch a game the same way again. Let's open with the most enduring myth in modern baseball lore, the juice ball theory. It's been bouncing around since the 90s like a corked bat in a World Series dugout. And for good reason. The core idea is simple, that Major League Baseball has, at certain times, deliberately altered the construction of baseballs to boost offense. Sounds crazy, not so fast, because when you start pulling at this thread, the fabric of plausible deniability starts to unravel. Sure, in the steroid era of the late 90s, sluggers were launching balls into the stratosphere, but back then, it was easy to blame it on bulging biceps and questionable pharmacy habits. Once testing got serious, home runs were expected to dip. But then came the shockwaves of 2017 and 2019, when the league broke home run records like they were made of sugar glass. What changed? Was it better training? Globalized talent pools? No. One of the biggest clues came in 2018, when MLB bought Rawlings, the very company that makes its baseballs. Think about that. The governing body of the league now owned the factory crafting, the heart of every play. That's like if the casino owned a card dealer. And then came 2019, when Commissioner Rob Manfred publicly admitted the balls were different, more tightly wound, slicker, with lower seams. Some physicists even said they had less drag. That's not just cosmetic, it changes the entire outcome of a game. Add to that the Goldilocks balls found during the 2020 season, balls that just happened to have higher exit velocity and were used in Yankees games during Aaron Judge's record-setting run in his starts, to look less like a coincidence and more like, well, selective magic. But here's where it gets really sticky. Proving intent is near impossible. MLB can and has hidden behind logistical explanations, supply chain variances, ball storage inconsistencies, random assignment, except randomness doesn't explain why certain teams saw more of these balls than others. And randomness doesn't conveniently coincide with one of the most marketable players in decades. Breaking a sacred record on a national stage, it's not just about a ball, it's about money, ratings, and legacy. So, is the juice ball theory fact? Not quite, but it's not fiction either. It exists in that uncomfortable gray area where truth and marketing meet. 2. Cal Ripken Jr. power outage. Claim: Orioles faked a stadium power outage in 1997 to preserve Ripken's streak after a domestic altercation. Evidence: timing of outage, Persistent rumors. Both Ripken and Kevin Costner denied it. Plausibility. Low. No credible evidence supports this. If the juice ball theory is the sleek, corporate thriller of MLB Conspiracies, then the Cal Ripken Jr. power outage saga is pure tabloid noir, with a sprinkle of baseball mythology. Let's rewind to August 14, 1997. The Baltimore Orioles are set to play the Seattle Mariners at Camden Yards. But just hours before game time, the lights mysteriously go out. A full-blown electrical failure shuts down the stadium. The game is postponed. On the surface, it sounds like an unfortunate blip in infrastructure. But behind the scenes, that's where the legend begins. Here's the theory. Cal Ripken Jr., the Iron Man of baseball, known for his unbroken streak of consecutive games played 2,432 at the time, was allegedly dealing with something far more personal. According to the whispers, that very day, Ripken caught his wife in a compromising position with none other than actor Kevin Costner. Yes, that Kevin Costner. What allegedly followed was an explosive confrontation, a missed departure to the stadium, and panic in the Orioles front office, not wanting the streak the most celebrated in modern baseball to end on a scandal. The team supposedly orchestrated a cover-up in the form of a fake power outage. It sounds ridiculous until you realize just how sacred that streak was. Ripken was more than a player. He was a symbol, a clean, consistent hero in the post-strike, post-scandal baseball landscape. The streak was the narrative glue keeping disillusioned fans interested. Losing it to tabloid drama that would have shattered more than light bulbs. Now, Ripken has publicly denied the rumor. Costner, too. The official explanation from the Orioles blamed a circuit malfunction, stating the lighting conditions were unsafe, especially with someone like Randy Johnson pitching at full velocity. But here's the rub. This isn't just a story about lights going out. It's about how much a league is willing to protect its icons. Whether or not the Costner fight happened is almost irrelevant. The fact that fans weren't and still are willing to believe such a cloak and dagger operation could take place tells you something profound about our relationship with sports. We don't just want heroes, we want them untouchable, even if it means rewriting reality. There, 1990 for Expos Sabotage. Claim, MLB strike was timed to prevent a small market team from winning the World Series. Evidence, Expos had best record before strike, team dismantled afterward. Plausibility, low, strike affected all teams and stemmed from labor issues. If baseball had a heartbreak anthem, the 1990 from Montreal Expos would be its opening chords. Imagine a team that was everything fans dream of: young, electric, destined for glory. Then imagine that dream being ripped away, not by another team, not by poor performance, but by the very league that gave them a stage. That's the core of the theory, that the 1990 for players strike wasn't just bad timing. It was a surgical strike to stop the rise of a small market Canadian team from disrupting the league's power structure. Let's look at the facts. The Expos were unstoppable, 74 wins to just 40 losses, 6 games ahead in the NL East. They were on pace to win over 100 games and were serious contenders for a World Series title. Their core was young and brimming with talent. Pedro Martinez, Larry Walker, Moises Alou, marquee grissom, the kind of lineup that made pitchers lose sleep. But in August, the MLB season was canceled. The World Series wiped from existence. And while every team was impacted, the Expos were the only team truly in position to win it all. The official reason was labor negotiations, collapsing owners versus players, money versus fairness. But here's where the conspiracy brews. Some fans and commentators believe the strike was subtly encouraged, if not orchestrated, to stop a Canadian team from claiming the title, a non-American champion in a sport fighting to regain national pride post-strike, not ideal for the league's image or its TV contracts. The Expos never got that chance again. Within a few years, the team's stars were sold off in a salary dump. Montreal, a city that once buzzed with baseball energy, watched as its team slowly dissolved. By 2005, the Expos were no more reincarnated as the Washington Nationals. Now, Let's be clear, there's no smoking gun proving a coordinated takedown, but the timing, suspicious, the aftermath, devastating, and the optics of letting a scrappy Canadian team threaten the hegemony of the Yankees, Braves, or Dodgers, well, let's just say the league had every incentive to prefer a different narrative. What fans of the Expos lost wasn't just a season, it was hope, identity, and maybe the only ring they were ever destined to wear. 4. Shohei Ohtani gambling cover-up. Claim: Ohtani's interpreter took the fall for Ohtani's own gambling activity. Evidence: mixed initial statements. Interpreter later pled guilty to fraud. DOJ found he impersonated Ohtani. Plausibility: very low. Overwhelming evidence supports Ohtani's innocence. Now let's talk about a theory that gripped the baseball world not in the past, but in the very recent present, a drama that unfolded in real time under the blinding spotlight of global media. This is an ancient history. It's March 2024. The name: Shohei Ohtani. The accusation: a potential gambling scandal so explosive it threatened to detonate the career of MLB's most cherished modern icon. Here's what went down. Shohei's close friend and longtime interpreter, Ipei Mizuhara, was caught wiring for $0.5 million from Ohtani's account to an illegal bookmaker, Matthew Bowyer. When the news broke, things got chaotic fast. Mizuhara initially told ESPN that Ohtani had paid the debt willingly, but just hours later, Ohtani's camp flipped the script, insisting Shohei had no knowledge of the transactions. That abrupt reversal triggered alarm bells. Was this just a misunderstanding, or a carefully constructed cover-up to shield MLB's golden child from career-ending consequences? The theory gained instant traction. Mizuhara, a familiar face always by Shohei's side, was dubbed the fall guy, someone to take the heat, absorb the fallout, and keep Ohtani's pristine reputation untarnished. After all, how could anyone transfer millions from Ohtani's personal accounts without his awareness? Ohtani isn't just another player, he's a brand, an empire, the face of two continents' baseball dreams. Protecting him would be in MLB's best interest, right? But conspiracy crumbled beneath the weight of evidence. The Department of Justice later revealed recordings of Mizuhara impersonating Ohtani during calls to the bank. That wasn't Shohei's voice, that was fraud. Mizuhara wasn't just lying to the press. He was lying to Ohtani himself. And the final nail: in 2024, Mizuhara pled guilty to bank fraud and tax evasion. He admitted it all, every lie, every dollar. And Ohtani, he cooperated fully, had no gambling history, and was cleared of wrongdoing. Still, the theory exposed something bigger: how much we project onto our heroes. The idea of Ohtani falling from grace was too irresistible to ignore. But what we really saw was how easily a narrative can spiral into wildfire, especially when it touches on fame, trust, and the public's need for drama. In the end, it wasn't a conspiracy. It was a betrayal, and it didn't come from the league or the media. It came from a friend. 5. Pete Rose, a scapegoat. Claim: Rose was banned to cover broader MLB gambling issues. Evidence: harsh punishment, contrast with para-leniency. Plausibility: speculative, no direct evidence, but perceived inconsistency in punishment fuels. It's some stories don't start with a mystery, they end with one. That's where Pete Rose's saga begins, not just as baseball's all-time hit king, but as its most infamous outcast. In 1989, he was handed a lifetime ban for betting on games while managing the Cincinnati Reds. Open and shut, right? He broke the rules. Case closed. Except, what if Pete Rose wasn't just punished? What if he was sacrificed? That's the heart of this enduring theory, that MLB didn't just punish Rose for gambling. It made him a public example to shield the league from a far bigger problem. That beneath the headlines and front-page shame, there were other players, other managers, other shadows where the same sins were hiding, but Pete was the only one who paid. And why him? Because he was high profile. Because his fall would send a message loud enough to drown out all the other whispers. Let's zoom in on the context. This wasn't a clean era for baseball. From behind-the-scenes rumors of clubhouse, Betting pools to questionable friendships between players and bookies. Gambling wasn't an anomaly, it was a parasite. But Pete got the full brunt. Why? Possibly because MLB needed to be seen doing anything to restore faith in the game, and in making Rose the scapegoat, they could turn the spotlight away from the rest. There's also the hypocrisy angle. Rose's punishment was absolute permanent banishment, Hall of Fame exclusion, endless public shame. Compare that to what we later saw during the steroid era. Players who chemically enhanced their performance, arguably doing more damage to the sport's integrity, were suspended, yes, but still allowed back. Some even got standing ovations. Meanwhile, Rose remains locked out, his legacy frozen in controversy. To be fair, Pete did eventually admit to betting on his own team, which in itself is a catastrophic breach of sports ethics. But the severity and singularity of his punishment raised questions that never go away. Was he guilty? Yes. But was he alone? Unlikely. And that's why this theory persists, not because it rewrites Pete's mistakes, but because it exposes the selective enforcement of morality in professional sports. It forces us to ask, what's worse, breaking the rules or being the only one punished for it? 6. Astros secret buzzers. Claim. Astros used wearable electronic buzzers in addition to trash can banging to cheat. Evidence. Jose Altuve's reluctance to remove jersey. Suspicions persist despite MLB finding no evidence. Plausibility. Unproven. But plausible. Circumstantial evidence. No smoking gun. If Pete Rose was baseball's sacrificial lamb, then the Houston Astros were its full-blown scandal beast. The 2017 and 2018 Astros sign-stealing operation wasn't just rumor, it was fact, documented, investigated, and punished. But what if that notorious trash can banging scheme was only the surface-level operation? What if there was a second layer, a deeper, more insidious method hiding in plain sight? That's where the buzzer theory comes in. According to many fans and even some players, the Astros weren't just banging on trash cans to relay stolen signs from a center field camera. They were allegedly using electronic devices, specifically wearable buzzers that vibrated to indicate pitch types. Imagine that for a second. A tiny wireless sensor taped to your body, silently guiding your swing. No noise, no signals, just a private buzz telling you if a fastball or curveball was coming. The theory exploded in 2019. After Jose Altuve's now infamous walk-off home run against Roldis Chapman in the ALCS. As Altuve rounded third, he noticeably signaled his teammates not to tear off his jersey. His excuse, modesty, a tattoo he didn't want shown, cold weather. But to skeptics, it looked like fear of revealing a hidden device beneath his uniform. Add that to the suspicious consistency of Astros hitters anticipating nasty pitches, and you've got a cocktail of circumstantial evidence too spicy for fans to ignore. Now here's where things get murky. MLB launched an investigation and found no proof of buzzer use. But they didn't confiscate clothing, didn't use electronic sweepers, didn't dig deep into wearables. They focused on what was already proven: the video relay and trash can system. And in doing so, they may have left just enough room for doubt to flourish. This theory lives not just because of speculation, but because of what the scandal represented. It wasn't just cheating, it was tech-enhanced betrayal. It crossed a line fans didn't know existed. The buzzer theory represents that next boundary, one we hope wasn't crossed, but aren't sure about either. In a world where Fitbit can track your heartbeat from space, why wouldn't a team use a discreet buzz to win a title? We may never get hard proof, but the stains on that championship still linger, and even if the buzzers were fiction, the doubt is real, and that's enough to haunt every swing that season. 7. Mike Piazza tipping pitches. Claim. Piazza deliberately tipped pitches to sabotage Roger Clemens in 2000 for All-Star Game. Evidence. Personal feud history. Unusual batter success. Plausibility. Low. Mostly fueled by their past conflict. Some baseball conspiracies swirl with layers of ambiguity. Others, they drip with petty revenge, and the one involving Mike Piazza might be the juiciest example of that. Picture this. It's 2004, the MLB All-Star Game in Houston. a showcase meant to celebrate the best the sport has to offer. But one catcher, Mike Piazza, might have come with something else on his mind. Payback. Rewind to 2000, the World Series. Piazza, catching for the Mets. Roger Clemens, pitching for the Yankees. In one of the most volatile moments in postseason history, Clemens fired a shattered bat barrel toward Piazza. In what looked like an intentional act of aggression, words were exchanged, tensions escalated, bad blood was confirmed, and then nothing until that all-star game for years later when fate decided to reunite them. Here's the conspiracy when Piazza caught for Clemens on the all-star roster. He allegedly tipped pitches to American League hitters as a form of subtle, beautiful revenge, not with dramatic signals but in quiet, precise ways only seasoned players would notice. The result? Clemens got lit up 6 runs in 1 inning. For a pitcher of his caliber, it was stunning, and here's where things get interesting. Batters were swinging early and confidently, as if they knew what was coming. Clemens looked rattled, confused, and Piazza, he didn't say a word. Was it coincidence? Sure, maybe. But for those who know the deep-seated pride and unwritten grudges in baseball, it felt like more than just a bad day. Of course, there's no hard evidence, no confessions, no caught-on camera signals. But in baseball, revenge often comes without receipts. The rhythm between pitcher and catcher is sacred if a catcher wants to tip pitches, even slightly. Most viewers would never notice. This theory might not shake the league's foundations, but it reminds us of something timeless. Baseball is personal, and grudges, especially when unresolved, can find their release in the most poetic and devastating ways. 8. Derek Jeter's scripted walk-off. Claim. Jeter's iconic 2014 walk-off hit was staged for a storybook ending. Evidence, game circumstances, opposing pitcher threw a hittable ball. No playoff stakes, plausibility, low to moderate, no proof, but the perfect nature raises eyebrows. Baseball has always flirted with the cinematic big entrances, walk-offs, career farewells wrapped in emotional bows. But one moment felt so perfectly scripted, so implausibly poetic, that many still wonder, was it real or rehearsed? September 25, 2014, Yankee Stadium. Derek Jeter steps up for his final at-bat in the Bronx, and in true Hollywood fashion, he smacks a walk-off single in the bottom of the 9th to win the game. Cue the tears, cue the ovations, cue the conspiracy. Now, let's set the stage. The Yankees had blown a 3-run lead in the top of the 9th, just in time to bring Jeter to the plate with the game on the line. The Baltimore Orioles, already locked into the postseason, had nothing to lose. They put Evan Meek on the mound, a journeyman reliever known more for giving up hits than closing games. The pitch, a fastball right down Broadway. Jeter didn't miss. To casual fans, it was destiny. To skeptics, it was too convenient. Did the Orioles take it easy on the captain out of respect? Did MLB coordinate an unforgettable finale for one of its most iconic players? Think about it. No playoff implications, a national broadcast, and a narrative the league would love to preserve. Jeter riding off into the sunset. That raised high. The truth, no formal evidence has ever surfaced to suggest collusion, but this theory doesn't hinge on documents. It hinges on instinct, on how eerily perfect the moment was, on how Meek's pitch looked less like a challenge and more like a parting gift, and on how the Yankees' blown save seemed just a little too well-timed. It doesn't mean it was fake. Jeter was known for clutch moments, but in a sport so frequently driven by chaos and failure, the idea that such a flawless ending could happen without orchestration feels, well, a little suspicious. And yet, maybe that's the beauty of it. Maybe we need one unsmudged fairy tale amid all the scandal and statistics, or maybe someone made sure that fairy tale came true. 9. Albert Bell's bat heist. Claim. True story. Jason Grimsley crawled through ceiling to swap a confiscated cork bat. Outcome, MLB confirmed incident. Bell suspended. Plausibility, 100% true. One of MLB's wildest confirmed incidents. Some conspiracies sound like fiction until they're confirmed. That brings us to one of the most brazen real-life heists in baseball history. A story so absurd it could have been a subplot in Ocean's 11. July 1994, the Chicago White Sox are playing the Cleveland Indians. White Sox manager Gene Lamont suspects something fishy, that slugger Albert Bell is using a corked bat. Umpires confiscate it and lock it up in their dressing room for further inspection. Case closed. Not quite, because what happened next wasn't just suspicious, it was downright cinematic. Under the cover of post-game routine, Indians pitcher Jason Grimsley decided to take matters into his own hands. He removed a ceiling tile in the clubhouse, crawled through the duct system like some rogue secret agent, and infiltrated the umpire's locked room from above. There, he found Bell's bat, swapped it with a legal one belonging to teammate Paul Sorrento, and slinked back through the ceiling like a mission-complete spy. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work. The umpires had discreetly marked Bell's original bat, and the switch was immediately detected. MLB launched an investigation, x-rayed the original, recovered bat, and confirmed it was corked. Bell was suspended. Grimsley eventually confessed. Unlike most baseball conspiracies, this one isn't about what might have happened. It did happen. The reason it still feels like a conspiracy is because of how ridiculous and desperate it all was. A grown man, a professional athlete, army crawling through a ceiling to protect the teammate's bat. This wasn't just cheating, it was theatrical cheating. The question we're left with isn't whether it occurred, but why they thought it might work. Did they really think umpires wouldn't notice? Did they believe MLB wouldn't follow up? Or did they just think they were smarter than everyone else? The Albert Bell bat heist stands as a perfect example of how far players and teams are willing to go to bend the rules, and how sometimes truth is not only stranger than fiction, but a whole lot funnier too. 10. Jon Lester's glove substance claim. Lester used a legal substance in 2013 World Series Game 1. Evidence: visible greenish substance. Cardinals didn't complain. Lester claimed it was rosin. Plausibility: moderate, suspicious, but inconclusive. Sometimes the strangest details hide in plain sight. And in Game 1 of the 2013 World Series, all as eventually settled not on the scoreboard, but on Jon Lester's glove. The Boston Red Sox ace delivered 7 2/3 scoreless innings against the St. Louis Cardinals' dominant, precise, electric. But amid the cheers and championship energy, eagle-eyed viewers spotted something odd, a greenish, goopy substance tucked into the webbing of his glove. And just like that, a new theory was born. Was Jon Lester doctoring baseballs on the biggest stage in the sport? Let's unpack the accusations. Pitchers have long danced with the dark art of manipulating ball movement using foreign substances. Vaseline, pine tar, sunscreen mixed with rosin is not exactly new. But seeing it on live television during the World Series, that hit differently. Fans speculated it gave Lester an unfair edge, making his cutter bite harder, his fastball dance, his dominance feel artificially enhanced. Lester's explanation? He said it was just rosin mixed with sweat, totally legal, but skeptics weren't convinced. The color looked off, the consistency didn't match, and the Cardinals, curiously silent. They never filed a formal complaint. Not a word from the dugout, no protest, no disruption. Why? Was it gamesmanship? Was it baseball's unwritten code not to air dirty laundry on the sport's grandest night? Or more darkly, did MLB know and simply choose to let it slide to protect the spectacle? There was no investigation, no glove inspection, and in an era before the league's crackdown on sticky substances, Lester's suspicious success just quietly entered the lore of postseason baseball. But here's what makes this theory sticky. We saw something. This wasn't imagination or hearsay, it was on camera. The only thing in question is what it was and whether it should have mattered. In hindsight, it serves as a precursor to the spider tax scandals and the sticky substance bans of later years. Baseball eventually caught up, but for a night in 2013, the game may have turned a blind eye to what everyone else could see clearly, glowing slightly green, hidden in the heart of a glove. 11. Barry Bonds blacklisting. Claim: MLB teams colluded to keep Bonds out despite elite stats due to steroid scandal. Evidence: no offers after a stellar 2007 season, filed a lost collusion grievance. Plausibility. High circumstantial evidence strongly supports the theory. Now we turn to a conspiracy that doesn't just question integrity, it questions history itself. Barry Bonds, 7-time MVP, home run king, and yet, despite leading the majors in on-base percentage, despite blasting 28 homers in 2007 at the age of 42, he never played another game, not even a whiff of interest from any of the 30 MLB teams. No contract offers, no spring training invites, just silence. And that silence is what fuels the theory that Bonds wasn't retired. He was blacklisted. Let's set the context. Bonds wasn't your average aging slugger. Even at 42, he was an offensive juggernaut. His OPS that year, 145, better than most league leaders today. He still terrified pitchers, still filled stadiums, still changed how games were managed, and yet no one signed him, not even for the league minimum, not for a pinch-hitting role, not for ticket sales, nothing. The theory? That MLB owners, quietly and collectively, decided they'd had enough. Bonds was the poster child for the destroyed era, knowingly or not, and the league was desperate to move on. After years of congressional hearings, media scrutiny, and shattered records, MLB wanted a fresh narrative, and Bonds, with his legal baggage, controversial personality, and towering asterisks, didn't fit the new image, so they shut the door. In 2008, Bonds filed a grievance alleging collusion. It didn't stick. The arbitrator ruled there wasn't sufficient evidence, but absence of proof doesn't mean absence of strategy. After all, if collusion is quiet, subtle, and unspoken, how do you prove it? How do you catch a shadow in the act? Especially when every owner benefits by simply doing nothing. This theory is one of the most believable because the logic aligns with the incentives. Why would a team take on the PR firestorm of signing Bonds when the league itself was trying to erase its destroyed, stained past? Better to let him fade away. Statistically elite, but contractually invisible, Bonds didn't get a farewell tour. He didn't get to go out on his terms. He was quietly exiled, banished not by rule, but by consensus. And that's what makes it hurt for so many fans, because it wasn't just about steroids. It was about legacy, about whether greatness, no matter how tainted, still deserves a stage. Bonds, for better or worse, earned that stage, and the league turned off the lights before he could take it one last time. 12. Shoeless Joe Jackson innocence. Claim: Jackson was wrongly banned in the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Evidence: strong World Series performance, claim to return bribe money, reinstated in 2025. Plausibility: debated, compelling case for innocence, though historical records conflict. Some ghosts linger not in dugouts or locker rooms, but in the history books, and few haunt the sport like Shoeless Joe Jackson. His name is practically carved into baseball folklore, not for the hits he racked up or the plays he made, but for the scandal that ended his career, the 1919 Black Sox incident. 8 players from the Chicago White Sox were banned for allegedly throwing the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds. Shoeless Joe, one of the game's brightest stars, was among them. But here's the twist that's kept fans arguing for over a century. What if Joe was innocent? This theory isn't just a fringe idea. It's a legitimate debate supported by stats, statements, and logic. In the 1919 World Series, Jackson hit .375. He had the series' only home run. He committed 0 errors and even threw out a runner at home plate. Those aren't the stats of a player tanking on purpose. If you're fixing the game, you don't perform like the MVP. Then there's the payment. Jackson admitted to receiving $5.00 from teammates involved in the fix, but also claimed he tried to return it and informed team owner Charles Comiskey about what was happening. Later, he recanted his confession entirely, saying it had been coerced. Still, the damage was done. MLB's new commissioner, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, desperate to clean up the sport's image, issued lifetime bans to all 8 accused players, Jackson included. The theory is that Joe was collateral damage, a sacrifice to show the world baseball meant business. Whether or not he actively participated didn't matter. He was famous, talented, and visible. His punishment was more about perception than proof, and for decades, that perception held. But history has started to bend. Over the years, scholars, fans, and fellow players have revisited the evidence. More and more, the public consensus has shifted toward believing that Jackson may have been the victim of overzealous judgment. And in May 2025, in a decision that felt both overdue and symbolic, Shoeless Joe Jackson was finally reinstated by MLB. He's now eligible for the Hall of Fame, a place many feel he should have entered long ago. In the end, this conspiracy wasn't about denying wrongdoing. It was about questioning the fairness of how guilt was assigned and whether baseball was willing to admit that sometimes it got its own story wrong. So what do all these stories, some fact, some fiction, some impossible to place, tell us about baseball? Not just the sport, but the spectacle, the theater, the billion-dollar machine that pumps out dreams and drama in equal measure. They tell us that baseball is more than hits and stats, it's mythology, and where there's mythology, there are always whispers in the shadows, whispered doubts, whispered secrets, whispered truths that sometimes no one wants to speak aloud. These conspiracy theories, juice balls, secret buzzers, suspicious walk-offs, and legendary scapegoats aren't just fan fiction. They're part of the living culture of baseball. They reveal our need to believe that behind the polish and press conferences, there's something raw and flawed, that the sport is human, and with humanity comes imperfection, ambition, ego, and sometimes deception. For every confirmed scheme like the Astro sign stealing or Albert Bell's bad heist, there are legends with no clear verdict. Did MLB really suppress a Canadian team's rise in '94? Did Ohtani's interpreter act alone? Was Bonds blackballed not for what he did, but for what he represented? And did Joe Jackson spend a century in exile for crimes he didn't commit? These aren't just questions for sports bars and Reddit threads. They're reflections of something deeper. We don't watch baseball just for clean wins. We watch it because it's unpredictable, dramatic, flawed, and these stories, these conspiracies, make it richer. They add mystery to memory. They force us to squint at greatness and wonder what really happened when no one was looking. And maybe that's the secret of baseball. Not that it's perfect, but that it keeps us questioning, keeps us looking closer. Because beneath the surface of every pitch, every swing, every celebration, there might be a story no one told.